They didn't call it Case 13 officially. In the database, it was filed under something sterile incident report. Site 47/status, unresolved/fatalities. 12 confirmed, but no one in the department used that name anymore. Not after what the recovery team brought back. Not after the audio. Among ourselves, quietly, almost superstitiously, we called it Case 13 because there were 12 bodies. And something else. I wasn't supposed to take it. When the file landed on my desk, it came with no preamble, no supervisor signature, no forwarding email, just a thick manila folder and a USB drive taped to the inside cover. The kind of thing that meant someone didn't want a record of assigning it. I remember staring at the label, Site 47, Rural Property Investigation attached. Audio log/forensic notes/photographic evidence, and beneath that, handwritten in shaky ink, "Don't listen alone."
I laughed at that.
Not because it was funny, but because I'd seen things like it before. Jokes, pranks. Gallows humor from overworked analysts who dealt with too much death and not enough answers.
Still, I didn't plug in the drive.
There was something about the handwriting. It didn't look rushed. It looked careful. Like someone had taken time to make sure every letter was legible while their hands were shaking. The case itself began 3 weeks earlier. A remote property, about 40 kilometers outside the nearest town, just farmland, abandoned irrigation lines, and a single 2-story house that had been empty for years. According to records, it belonged to a family that moved away nearly a decade ago. No electricity, no water, no reason for anyone to be there. And yet, 12 people were. The first call came from a passing truck driver who noticed the front door wide open at dawn. He thought it was a squatter situation, maybe a break-in. When he stepped inside, he didn't even make it past the hallway before he ran back out and called it in. By the time local authorities arrived, the smell had already spread into the yard. I flipped through the photographs slowly. That's something you learn to do in this line of work: never rush images. Let your brain process them piece by piece, like stepping into cold water instead of jumping. The first photo showed the exterior. The house leaned slightly to the left, like it was tired. The paint had long since peeled away, leaving gray wood exposed to the elements. Windows were boarded from the inside except for one on the second floor, where the boards had been torn loose. Not removed, torn. The edges were splintered outward. Something had forced its way out. The next photo was the hallway. I had to pause there. The floor was wrong. At first glance, it looked like mud tracked in from outside. Thick, dark, uneven patches smeared across the wooden boards. But when you looked closer, you could see the streaks, the drag marks. It wasn't mud. It was blood dried in layers so thick it had cracked like old paint. And the footprints, they overlapped each other, chaotic, circling, doubling back. Some barefoot.
Some not. Some...
As if whoever made them had stopped mid-step. I kept going. You have to. The bodies were found in the living room, all 12. The photo was taken from the doorway, as if the photographer hadn't wanted to step fully inside. I understood why. They weren't scattered. They were arranged. Not neatly, nothing about it was neat, but intentionally. The corpses formed a rough circle in the center of the room, limbs twisted at unnatural angles, heads tilted toward the same point, the middle, where there was nothing.
At least, nothing visible.
I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. There's a moment, with cases like this, where your brain tries to categorize what you're seeing. Ritual killing, cult behavior, group psychosis. You reach for familiar patterns because the alternative is worse. But there were details that didn't fit. There were no signs of restraint, no defensive wounds consistent with a struggle against another person. And the expressions, I forced myself to look again. Even in death, their faces held something that felt unfinished. Not fear exactly, not pain, recognition. Like they had seen something they understood too late. I skipped ahead to the forensic notes. Cause of death, preliminary, unknown external trauma, minimal internal findings, inconsistent/anomalous. That word anomalous appeared again and again, underlined each time. One line stood out. Subject 4 exhibits complete collapse of thoracic cavity structures without corresponding external compression.
I read it twice.
Then a third time. It didn't make sense.
Organs don't just
Not without force. Not without damage to the surrounding tissue. Unless something had... No. I stopped that thought before it finished forming. The last section of the folder was the audio log. There was a note clipped to it, recovered from device found on subject. 12-point device was active at time of discovery, which meant someone had been recording. Until the end. I stared at the USB drive for a long time.
The office was quiet.
Too quiet. The kind of silence that presses against your ears until you start hearing things that aren't there, your own breathing, the faint hum of electricity in the walls, or something else. I told myself that was just fatigue. I told myself a lot of things. Then I plugged it in. There was only one file. Log 13 final.wav, of course it was. I hesitated again. Not because I was afraid of what I'd hear, but because deep down I knew something would change once I did. That's the thing about certain cases. They don't stay on paper. I clicked play. At first there was nothing, just static. Low, uneven, like distant wind through broken glass. Then a voice.
Molly.
Mid-30s maybe, breathing hard. Okay, it's still working. A pause. You said to keep recording. So I'm recording. Another pause, longer this time. I don't think that matters anymore. There was movement in the background. Footsteps. More than one set. Slow, the man whispered, "They're still here." Something thudded. A body hitting a wall maybe. Then a sound I couldn't place. Not at first. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't an animal. It was like multiple voices trying to speak through the same mouth at once. The man gasped. No, don't. The sound cut him off. Closer now. Louder. And underneath it, just barely audible words. I leaned forward instinctively, trying to catch them, trying to understand.
Not empty.
The phrase slipped through the distortion, warped but unmistakable.
Never empty.
The man started crying. I didn't see it, he said.
I swear I didn't see it at first.
Footsteps again. Right next to him now. You think it's just a house, he whispered. Just wood and walls, he choked. It's not. Something scraped against the microphone. A wet sound. Dragging. Then silence. For a full 10 seconds there was nothing. No breathing. No movement. Just the faint hiss of the recording. And then a new voice. It wasn't the man. It wasn't anyone I could identify. It didn't sound human.
Still one miss.
The file ended. I sat there for a long time after that. Long enough that the office lights flickered once, reminding me how late it had gotten. 12 bodies. A circle. A voice saying one was missing. Case. 13. I closed the file. But the sound didn't leave. It stayed in the back of my mind, replaying, distorting like it hadn't finished speaking. Like it was waiting. And that was when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the inside of the folder, beneath the USB drive, there was another note. This one wasn't handwritten. It was typed, precise, deliberate. If you are reviewing this case, you are now part of it. I don't remember deciding to go to the site, but the next morning, I was already on the road. And the closer I got, the quieter everything became. The road to Site 47 wasn't marked. Not officially. The GPS lost signal about 10 kilometers out, leaving me with a flickering map and a thin gray line that didn't quite match the dirt path ahead.
I should have turned back then.
That would have been the reasonable thing to do. But reason had already started to feel distant, like something I'd left behind without noticing. The air changed first. It wasn't dramatic, no sudden drop in temperature, no cinematic fog rolling in, but there was a density to it, a thickness. Each breath felt slightly heavier, like inhaling through damp cloth. I cracked the window. The smell hit immediately.
Not raw.
Not exactly. Something older. Like soil that had been turned over too many times, and something buried there refused to stay buried. I drove slower after that. The landscape stretched endlessly on either side, dry fields, brittle grass, the occasional skeletal tree clawing at the sky. No birds, no insects, no sound except the low hum of the engine. And then the engine cut out. No warning, no sputter. The car rolled forward a few more meters before stopping completely. I stared at the dashboard. Everything was dead. No lights, No ignition. Even the clock had frozen mid-second. That shouldn't happen. Cars don't just stop existing. I tried the key.
Nothing.
Again. Still nothing. I sat there for a moment, hands gripping the wheel, listening to my own breathing. Then a sound, not from the car. From outside, a faint creaking. Wood shifting under pressure. I looked up and saw the house. I don't remember the last stretch of road. I don't remember turning. But there it was, maybe 50 meters ahead, exactly like the photo, and yet not. It felt closer, larger.
Wrong.
The boards over the windows were still there, but some hung loose now, swaying slightly though there was no wind. The front door stood open, just as the report said. But what unsettled me most wasn't the structure. It was the silence around it. No wind, no movement. Not even the distant hum I'd grown used to on the drive. It was like the world had stopped at the edge of the property and refused to come any closer. I stepped out of the car. The moment my foot touched the ground, the creaking stopped. I froze. Then slowly it started again. Not from the house this time. From behind me, I turned. Nothing. Just the empty road stretching back the way I'd come. But the sound didn't stop. It circled. That's the only way I can describe it. Not moving toward me. Not moving away.
Just, sir.
I forced myself to breathe.
Force myself to move.
One step forward, then another. The closer I got to the house, the stronger the smell became. Not Deca, something more metallic now, sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. Blood. Old, dried blood. The doorway loomed ahead. Dark. Open. Waiting. I hesitated at the threshold. There's a line in every investigation, a moment where you cross from observer to participant. You don't always recognize it at the time. But looking back, that was it. I stepped inside. The temperature dropped instantly. Not cold exactly, but hollow. Like the air had been scooped out and replaced with something thinner. The hallway matched the photographs.
Mostly.
The blood was still there, thick and cracked across the floor, but the patterns, they'd changed. I crouched down, studying them. The old footprints were still visible beneath, but new ones had formed over them. Fresher, darker, still wet. My stomach tightened. Someone else had been here.
Recently.
Or something had. I stood slowly, my eyes following the trail. It didn't lead deeper into the house. It led in circles. Round and round the hallway, overlapping itself, again and again. Like something pacing. I swallowed hard.
Hello?
I called out. My voice sounded wrong, muted, as if the walls were absorbing it before it could travel. No response. But the circling sound returned, closer now, inside. I turned toward it. Nothing. But the footsteps continued.
Right beside me.
Matching my position. Keeping pace.
I stopped.
They didn't. I heard them move past me.
Slow. Measure.
And then they stopped too. Right behind me. The air shifted. I felt it before I heard it. A pressure. Like someone standing too close. Breathing too close. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Instead, I focused on the living room doorway ahead. The place where the bodies had been found. And then something brushed my shoulder. Light. Barely there. But unmistakable. I spun around. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The sound was gone. The pressure lifted. I stood there, heart hammering, trying to convince myself it had been nothing. Just nerves. Just imagination. But then I saw it. On the wall. A mark. It hadn't been there before. I was certain of that. It was small. Subtle. Easy to miss. A handprint. Pressed into the dust. But it wasn't the size that caught my attention. Or even the fact that it was fresh. It was the shape. The fingers were too long, too thin, and there were too many of them. I backed away slowly, and that's when the whisper came, right next to my ear. So you came alone. I flinched, stumbling forward, my breath catching in my throat. I turned nothing, but the voice lingered, not in the air, in my head. And then from the living room a sound, a wet, dragging noise. The same one from the recording, slow. Intentional. Something was moving. I stepped toward the doorway before I could stop myself, drawn by it. pulled. The room beyond was darker than it should have been. The windows were boarded, yes, but light still should have filtered through the gaps. It didn't. The center of the room was swallowed in shadow. And in that shadow, something shifted. Not clearly, not fully, but enough.
A shape.
Low to the ground. Too many limbs. And then it moved, fast. Not toward me, around, circling. The same pattern as the footprints. The same pattern as the sound. Round and round and round, and then it stopped. Directly in front of me. Close enough that I should have been able to see it clearly, but I couldn't. Because something was wrong with the space itself. Like my eyes refused to focus on it. Like it existed just outside the rules of sight. And then it spoke. Now there are 13. The temperature dropped again. The pressure returned. And behind me, the hallway footsteps started up once more. But this time they were 2 sets. I didn't run.
Not at first.
There's a moment just before panic takes over where the mind tries to understand what's happening. It clings to logic, to patterns, to anything that can make the impossible feel manageable. 2 sets of footsteps behind me. One thing in front of me that I couldn't see. A voice counting. Now there are 13.
I should have turned and run.
I should have left the house, left the road, abandoned the car, and walked until my legs gave out. But something held me there. Not physically. Something worse. Recognition. The same expression I'd seen in the photographs. On the faces of the dead.
I understood.
Too late. The thing in the darkness shifted again. Closer now. I still couldn't see it fully. My vision slipped around it, like trying to focus on something underwater, but the edges were becoming clearer. Too many joints. Limbs bending where they shouldn't. A shape that didn't settle into one form. It tilted. Like it was looking at me. Behind me, the footsteps grew louder. Closer. No longer circling. Approaching. I took a step back. Then another. The air thickened. Breathing became harder, like the room was filling with something invisible.
Stay where you are.
The voice came from behind me. Not the whisper from before. This one was human. I turned. A man stood in the hallway. He hadn't been there before. I was certain of it. Mid-40s. Polly. Clothes stained with something dark and dried. His eyes were wide, not with fear, but with something deeper. Resignation. You shouldn't have come, he said. My throat felt tight.
You, who are you?
He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked past me. Into the living room. At the thing I couldn't see. It doesn't like when people come alone, he said quietly. A cold realization slid into place.
Subject 12.
The recorder. The last voice on the file. He gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. But you died, I said. I heard the recording. I heard it doesn't matter, he interrupted. His voice cracked slightly. Death doesn't mean what you think it means here. The thing in the room shifted again. Closer.
Still incomplete.
The voice layered over itself, vibrating through the air. The man flinched. It's trying to finish, he said. Finish what? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw it. The same expression. From the photographs. Recognition. The count. My stomach dropped.
No, I said.
That's not. There were 12 bodies. 12 victims. He shook his head slowly. That's what they found. The footsteps behind him began to multiply. Not just 2 anymore. More. Soft. Dragging. They thought it was over, he continued. They thought whatever happened here stopped. Another voice whispered from somewhere in the walls. Not empty, it never stops, he said. The thing in the living room lunged. I didn't see it move.
I felt it.
The air slammed into me like a wave, knocking the breath from my lungs. I staggered backward, hitting the wall hard enough to rattle the boards. Something brushed against my face. Cold. I wiped at it instinctively. My hand came away dark, blood, fresh. But it wasn't mine. I looked up. The man subject 12 was still standing there. But something was wrong.
His chest, it was collapsing.
Not violently, not explosively, slowly. Like something inside him was being removed. He gasped, his hands clawing at his shirt. It takes pieces, he choked. Not all at once, never all at once. His ribs folded inward with a sickening silent motion. No blood, No tearing, just absence. "It leaves enough to keep you here," he whispered.
His eyes locked onto mine.
To count. Behind him, the hallway filled. Figures. At first, I thought they were shadows. Then I realized they were people. Or what was left of them. The 12. Their bodies were wrong. Not like the photographs. More distorted. More unfinished. Limbs missing. Faces partially collapsed. Gaps where parts of them had been taken. And yet they were standing. Watching. Waiting.
12.
The layered voice pulsed through the room. The thing in front of me shifted again. Closer. And for the first time I saw it. Not clearly. Not full, but enough. It wasn't one thing. It was made of them. Fragments. Pieces of bodies. Faces that flickered in and out of alignment. Arms that didn't belong to the same torso. Eyes too many blinking at different times. And in the center a hollow space. Empty. Waiting.
One more.
The thing reached toward me. Not with a hand. With something that pretended to be a hand. I stumbled back, my mind finally breaking free of its frozen state.
I ran.
The hallway stretched. Longer than it should have been. The door farther away. The figures moved with me.
Not chase.
Keeping pace. "You can't leave," Subject 12 called after me, his voice fading. "Not once it sees you." The front door slammed shut. I hit it hard, fumbling with the handle. It wouldn't budge. Behind me, the dragging sound. Closer. Faster.
The walls creaked.
Shifted. The house was changing. The hallway narrowed, the ceiling dipping lower, the boards bending inward like something was pressing against them from the outside. Or the inside. Not empty, never empty. The voices overlapped, rising, swelling, filling the space until it felt like they were inside my skull. The thing was there, right behind me. Closer than it had ever been. And now I could see the hollow. It was shaped like a person, waiting to be filled. "No," I whispered. The thing tilted. "You understand now." Its not hand touched my chest, and the world folded. Pain didn't come.
Not the way I...
There was no tearing, no burning. Just a sensation of something being taken. Not flesh. Not bone. Something deeper. Something that made me me. Memories flickered. Faces. Voices. Places. And then darkness. But not silence. Never silence. 13.
Complete, and then ... now. The voice faltered.
For the first time.
Still one miss.
The pressure snapped. The world came back all at once. I was on the floor, gasping, alive. The thing recoiled, confused.
Wrong.
The figures in the hallway shifted, uneasy. Subject 12, what remained of him, looked at me with something new. "It didn't finish," he whispered. The thing screamed, not loud, but deep, like something breaking at the foundation of the house itself. The walls shuddered. The boards split. Litrial light poured through the cracks. And for a moment the thing lost shape, lost cohesion, lost control.
"Ron," Subject 12 shouted.
"This time I did." I slammed into the door, and it opened. I didn't look back. I ran until the house disappeared behind me, until the air felt real again, until the sound finally stopped. I didn't stop running until I reached the road. The car was still there, exactly where I'd left it. For a moment I just stood there, bent over, hands on my knees, trying to pull air back into my lungs. The world felt... The sky stretched wide and empty above me. The fields swayed faintly in a breeze I hadn't noticed before. Sound had returned. Distant. Faint, but real. I looked back once. The house was still there. Small now. Like nothing had happened. I staggered to the car and reached for the door handle. It opened. The interior looked untouched. The keys were still in the ignition. The clock had reset itself, blinking 0 a.m. in dull green digits. I slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine started immediately. No hesitation, no resistance. As if it had never failed at all. I didn't question it. I didn't want to. I drove. The road stretched ahead, familiar now. The same dry fields, the same scattered trees. The GPS flickered back to life after a few minutes, reorienting itself with a soft chime. Civilization returned slowly. A power line here, a distant structure there. And with each passing kilometer, the memory of the house began to feel less solid. Not gone, never gone, but distant, like something half remembered from a dream. I told myself that was normal.
Shock does that.
Trauma fragments things, blurs edges, protects you. I told myself a lot of things. By the time I reached the outskirts of town, the sun was already setting.
I went straight back to the office.
I don't remember the drive through the city. I don't remember parking. I just remember sitting at my desk again. The same desk. The same folder. 13 point, it was still there, untouched, exactly as I had left it. I stared at it for a long time. Then slowly I opened it. The photographs were the same.
The report's unchanged. 12 bodies.
No mention of me. No mention of a survivor. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Of course. There hadn't been one.
That was the whole point.
Case 13, no survivor. A faint smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Not from relief. From something else. Understanding. I reached for the USB drive. Log 13 final.wav, my fingers hovered over it. Then I noticed something new.
A second file.
It hadn't been there before. I was certain of it. Log 14 current.wav, my chest tightened. Slowly, carefully, I clicked it. Static. Then a voice. My breath caught. No, I was... You said to keep recording, the voice continued.
My voice.
My cadence, my breathing.
So I'm recording.
The room felt smaller. I don't think that matters anymore. The same words. The same tone. Repetition. No, I said again, louder this time. But the file kept playing. Footsteps. Not from the recording. From the hallway outside my office. Slow. Dragging. I turned toward the door.
They're still here.
The voice in the recording whispered it. But I heard it outside too. My heart began to pound.
That wasn't possible.
The house was miles away. The thing I escaped, didn't I? The office lights flickered. Just once. Then again. The hum of electricity warped, bending into something uneven.
Something familiar.
Static. I stood slowly. The footsteps stopped, right outside my door. A shadow stretched beneath it. Too many angles. Too many points of movement. My throat went dry.
You understand now?
The voice didn't come from the recording this time. It came from everywhere. From the walls. From the floor. From inside my own head.
No.
The handle on the door twitched.
Once.
Then again.
Not Em.
The words crawled through the room.
I backed away.
The computer screen flickered. The audio file glitched, then changed. The waveform shifted, rewriting itself in real time. The label updated. Log 15 pending.wav, my breath stopped.
Still one missing.
The whisper was right behind me. Closer than breath, closer than thought. I turned. The reflection in the black screen of the monitor stared back at me. But it moved first. Its mouth opened, and it smiled. Not wide,
not exaggerated.
Just enough recognition. The same expression. From the photographs. From subject. 12 point from all of them. And then it leaned forward, out of the screen. Not fully. Not completely, but enough. Enough for something to touch my chest. Cold.
Familiar.
And as everything began to fold again, I understood the final truth of case. 13 point, there were never 12.
There were never 13.
There is only ever the next. The next file appeared instantly. Log 15 current.wave A, and somewhere far away a phone rang. A desk received a folder. A note was written carefully by trembling hands. Don't listen alone.